All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to make a start. So welcome to all the new members and welcome back to all the members from last year, and also to Karen as the new Vice Chair. So I just have to read out this prepared script. This is a public meeting and members of the public and press are permitted to report on the proceedings. Reporting includes filming, photographing, making an audio recording and providing commentary on proceedings. Please note this meeting is recorded and streamed live. These recordings are published on the relevant meeting page of the Council's website. By choosing to attend this public meeting, you are deemed to have given your consent to being filmed or recorded and for any footage to be broadcast or published. If the alarm sounds, the premises must be evacuated immediately. Do not spend time collecting personal belongings. All emergency escape routes are clearly signed. Once you have left the building, the assembly point is in the High Street, opposite the Guildhall. Members and other speakers are reminded to use their microphone when speaking. Okay, so with that done, can we move on to agenda item 1, appointment of substitutes?
Yes, Chair, we have Councillor Mitchell for Councillor Hassan. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any declarations of interest? Okay, take that as none. Do we have any public participation?
None, Chair.
None. Okay, so on to agenda item 4, the minutes of the previous meeting on 15th of March. I'll just take these page by page. So any comments? Page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. Okay, so I'll take that as an accurate record. Everyone happy? Agenda item 5 is the progress update for the Environmental Sustainability Strategy Action Plan. And I shall hand over to David.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Good evening. Members will recall that the Council approved an environmental sustainability strategy in late 2020 for the Council, and then following that approved an action plan for implementation of the first phase of the strategy. And it was agreed that we would bring reports to this committee twice yearly to update on progress and delivery. And this is the second of these reports. So there's a fairly comprehensive report and a performance report before you in the papers. What I'll try and do is bring out some of the main points, and I'm sure members will have questions on various matters when I've concluded. So going through at section 3, overall we've done a lot actually towards this. There are a lot of initiatives and pieces of work that officers have been undertaking. It is a ambitious strategy. There is a lot to be done in the longer term, but I hope that this report gives members a flavour for the amount of work that has been done and progress has been made so far. So picking through some highlights from work that's been carried out to date, there are 9 new EV charging points now in St Martin's Gate, and there's a figure there for 9.3 tonnes of carbon dioxide that's been saved through the use of those. And you'll recall that Council has approved a further £200,000 to invest in charging points, and work's ongoing to implement that across other City Council car parks. A big piece of work has been the Green Homes Grant, which has seen over 160 homes occupied by residents on lower incomes receive energy efficiency improvements. So insulation, that was by the end of August last year. Improvements are around £10,000 per property, and it's estimated that that will save 67 tonnes per annum of carbon dioxide for Worcester. We've continued to trial e-bike schemes, building on the Woo Bike scheme. So there's a scheme for businesses in partnership with the University of Worcester. We've also taken that up ourselves, so council officers and particularly the civil enforcement officers have been making very good use of e-bikes to reach some of the further corners of our city. And I'm pleased to say that the Town Fund business case that was approved by Policy and Resources Committee for active travel, that includes a bike hire scheme, we've had formal approval from government of confirmation of the funding, so following approval of the business case, so we're able to proceed with that particular project. The environmental sustainability grants, community grants, have been very successful and very popular. So over the last 6 months, we've given out 22 grants of up to £1,000. Relatively small projects in schools and community groups, but a range of initiatives there, which have been very popular. And as we have over many years, the council's continued with its tree planting programme. So a couple of examples there, Akenbury Orchard and Purdyswell Park in particular, where a large number of trees have been planted. As I said, the performance report at Appendix 1 gives details for each of the actions in the plan. I just wanted to draw your attention to a couple more points. So at 4.1, it looks at emissions from council buildings. We've switched to green zero emission rated electricity across all of our sites now. We are looking at a feasibility study to install more solar panels on the roof of St Martin's Gate car park. So the solar panels that were installed previously have reduced our carbon footprint. The numbers are there within the report. With the rising fuel prices, the payback period on an investment in solar panels is starting to come down considerably. So we're doing a piece of work to investigate the feasibility of that, and clearly we bring any proposals back to committee. Looking at emissions from transport, in addition to officers using e-bikes, we have commissioned a report around our fleet. It's very early days, I think you would say, for heavy goods vehicles and refuse vehicles in terms of electric, but members will have noticed a good number of Sandra's team's vehicles, the vans, etc., have switched to electric, and you can see those around the city. So I just wanted to pick out at section 9 and just to clarify some of the numbers in 9.1. And I'm reliably informed that actually the numbers there is correct to the estimate of electric vehicles that could be on roads by 2030. That's actually a 2,500% increase on today, rather than 2,500 vehicles. So you can see the sort of exponential growth in the use of electric vehicles, and something we're very much looking to support through our electric vehicle charging points, and also looking at developing an electric vehicle charging strategy. And then at item 10, following the motion to council and the resolution of council that's produced at 10.1, officers have identified a location within the Arboretum, a company, Enterprise Cars, who are keen to pursue the car club, and local residents that also wish to take that on, and I believe some of the members have been involved as well. So we're very pleased that we're able to support that and hope to see that launched in the coming months. So I'm just going to go to item 16 now, really, just to draw your attention to the single-use plastics work we've done. There was a big promotional campaign. Members will be aware that we've done a lot of work at the City Council in reducing single-use plastics at our events and our functions. And we were pleased to work with a couple of local businesses and Plastic Free Worcester to promote and champion that. And we've got 39 businesses to date have signed up to be plastic-free champions and take that forward. And then the final thing I wanted to bring to members' attention is that we do plan to host an environmental summit in September, to be hosted here at the Guildhall. We'd like to bring together local businesses, community groups and organisations together to talk through how we can work together on a number of our priorities. So the 5 priorities in the Sustainability Action Plan. There'll be some discussion clearly of what the Council's doing and our leadership role in this area, but we're very keen to get on board other interested organisations and parties. I mean, it's a huge task moving towards carbon zero. It's not something that the Council can do entirely on itself. We need the whole of the City of Worcester to work together to take us towards that target. So with your permission, Chair, I'll leave it there. I'm obviously very happy to take questions.
Okay, yeah, well, thank you for ride through the report. I've got Chris and then anyone else? Oh, lots of people. Let me virtually everyone. Okay, Chris, do you want to go first?
Thank you, Chair. 3 questions. One, probably a lack of knowledge because I don't normally sit on this committee, but hopefully you'll help me out, David. First one, if this strategy was agreed in October 20, the numbers of 130,000 EVs across the county, understanding we can only affect what goes on in the city, we put 9 in the other day. We've had 2 years, what's the plan across the city? And I understand there are other stakeholders involved in this, but we do own a lot of the car park. What is our plan for rollout of electric vehicle charging points? Because I haven't seen that in here, other than it says we're going to have one. 2030, it's only 7 years away now. So that, on average, to me, that says we've got to be putting in 400 a year if we've got to get to 2,300. And every year we miss it. That's my question. One, do we have a plan or when it's going to arrive? My next question, and this is the one, my lack of knowledge, I guess, lots of reference to the amount of carbon CO2 that we've saved or not produced, which is great. But to a lay person like me, what does that mean in terms of what's the reference? What do we traditionally produce in a year as a percentage? So are we saving 8% across the city, or even if just for the council, is it 1%, 5%, 10%? Because that, I think, will probably have more meaningfulness to other people, including myself. And the final one, get right into detail. How many staff have taken up the bike national insurance tax rebate scheme? It's already good having it, but how many are actually using it?
Okay,
3 questions, David.
thank you, through you, Chair. I'll answer your second question first, if I may. So the reference to the amount saved, our sort of reference point, and the previous report was brought, the council has produced around 1,300 tonnes of carbon dioxide per annum as a council. So it puts into context saving 10 tonnes from the EV charging points at St Martin's Gate, 67 tonnes from the Green Homes Grant, and I think I will give you a proper answer on this, but I think from memory something like 300 kilotonnes of carbon dioxide is the city's output, the estimated city's output. So that's 300,000.
Yep.
So we are doing quite a lot, but that's a big amount of carbon dioxide that we need to work towards, which is why we need the whole of the city to work together with us.
So less than 1% when you add those together. We're doing 1,300 and we've closed 70. Yeah. Okay, so that's not to deride it. I'm just trying to get a feel of the challenge ahead. Okay, thank you.
And we will bring a more detailed statistical report on that for the next update. That's something that's planned to be done. That will be an annual report. The cycle to work scheme, I don't have those figures for you.
Later.
I know the scheme. I know there's a number of staff that have done that. A number have done it some years ago, myself included. But we can give you a written answer on that one. So the council's plan for the rollout of EV charging, we've done quite a bit, and it's referred to in the report what we have done. So the charging points already in St Martin's Gate, the £200,000 that we've got invested. We've recently been looking at some national funding and the opportunities for that. It wasn't quite right for Worcester. That was more focused on street charging, so not necessarily in council car parks, and it was a pilot first tranche, but we're certainly looking very hard at the second tranche. And one of the things that is clear, in order to underpin that, you do really need to have a charging strategy for the city. So we don't have a formal charging strategy for the city. We've been deploying some funding and doing some work at the moment. So that's something that needs to be in our work plan for the coming 6 to 12 months.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So that gives me some concern, because we're 2 years in. We're saying we've got to deliver 2,500 charging points. Admittedly, we won't have to deliver all of them, and we've got to do that in 6 years now. That's a tall order, just for the physical labour part of it, let alone deciding where you're going to put them and everything. So I think we're running the risk of delivering too little, too late if we're not careful. Would be my concern.
Yeah, that's noted. And as a context, we've got sort of 6 districts, and that's 2,700 across the county, but it's still 500, 600 we're going to want for Worcester. So that's something we need to build into the strategy. There are public charging points at some supermarkets and other sites as well, and those are all available actually on a very good tool, a map that's publicly available, which we can share the link with members. But yes, we've got more to do on that.
So sorry to labour, but that's where the plan is. You know, if we understood what Tesco's were doing, what Sainsbury's were doing, what County were doing, we would have a better handle on what our liability was, or we may not have a liability. You don't know. I don't know. So yeah, so with that sort of engagement across wider stakeholders, you know, and businesses, you know, who's building offices and what charging points are going in, I guess is a link with planning as well, or new developments and stuff. So, okay, thank you, David. Really helpful.
Yeah, thanks for that input, Chris. And that conversation that you're talking about with the EV strategy is exactly the one we've been having. We need to know what everyone's doing, and we also need to share with partners the growth in EVs to give them confidence in providing more infrastructure, because it's not just going to be the city council, it's got to be everybody. Before I move on to the next question, I'll just see I've got everybody. So yeah, anyone else? Yeah, is that okay? So Richard, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got three questions, and it's following up, following up from what Chris Mitchell has just been talking about. One of the biggest problems which I'm hearing from the ability for people to actually charge their vehicles is their lack of ability to charge them from home. And I know I've said this before, within 10 minutes walk of St John's Church, there are 2,000 residents who haven't got any off-street parking. So they haven't got the ability to charge at home. One of the things which has been done elsewhere is cable gullies, where you can sink cables into the pavement so they don't trip over people as they walk over them. They roughly cost about £500 to £700 in order to install. I wonder whether to spread the use of cable gullies across the city may be a way to enable more on-street car charging, EV charging points across the city, to enable people to have them at home who can't realistically have them in any other way, and whether the monies which we've managed to attract, the 200k, can actually go in some ways to support and to sponsor and subsidise the cost of installing cable gullies, which would enable more people to have electric vehicles. That's question one. Question two, on active travel, we've mentioned about the success of the e-bike trial with business and the work of the university, about the success of officers ourselves using it, but what's the success of other businesses using it? How successful has it been with other businesses across the city? And have you got any data about usage and take up? And the third question, I'm trying to struggle to find a place to raise it, but I'll raise it under, I don't know, carbon neutral Worcester. There's a conversation I had recently about converting the weir in Worcester to have an electric turbines to generate electricity. I know this has been discussed many times in the past, but now with the new fish pass which has been created, the risks to wildlife are minimised. I just wondered if we got any further information or data or speculation about how this can be moved forward into something which is a little bit more positive.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I will try and address your third question. I probably could come up with some speculation around that, but that might not be the most appropriate answer for the committee. You're quite right, that was looked at some years ago. I recall, and many years ago, I recall there were some discussions around the effect on wildlife with the narrow river, the sounds of the turbines, high frequency noise, etc. Whether the height of the weir was actually sufficient at all times to produce a sufficient amount of electricity. I think we've looked at it a couple of times and done some high-level inquiries with the Environment Agency, but there's nothing in the pipeline at the moment. Yeah. So, with regard to the active travel, so the project we've got at the moment has trialled e-bikes with a number of businesses. I might ask my colleague Claire whether she's got some information on that she was able to relay.
So there are 6 businesses which have taken up the offer so far, and they are just coming to the end of 6-week trial. So we can now go out and offer those bikes to new businesses. So the whole project was funded by an £18,000 LGA grant. So we're sort of limited with the number of bikes that we have at the moment, but there's no reason why we can't keep on offering bikes to more businesses in the future.
Sorry, you say 6 businesses have taken it. Do we know how successful it has been with those businesses?
I'm waiting to hear back from the university and writing a report which is due on Monday.
So for the benefit of the audio, that may not have been picked up. So we've trialled with 6 businesses, and we're due a report back on Monday, which will tell us how successful that's been. I think anecdotally, they've liked the bikes, they've used them. Time will tell whether they'll actually go out and then purchase bikes, and then we can use the bikes again. And your first question, Richard, was around charging from home and off street, and the potential for gullies. I mean, that is, of course, a highways matter as to works in the highway. We do talk with highways officers. It's not something we've actively pursued, but a charging strategy for the city that I talked about earlier will need to involve the county council. So we will have those discussions. I don't have the resolution in front of me, but I recall that the £200,000 was quite specifically for charges in council car parks. So obviously a change to that would require another decision by members.
Okay.
Just to take point 1 on just slightly further from David, I think we are awaiting a position from the county council on street charging provision. It was something that I think they've been reviewing over the last couple of months. So officers continue to talk with county council colleagues, and we wait with bated breath what their position will be on it.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. And if we do get something through, could you share it with the committee members? Because I think obviously there's a high level of interest. Who should we go for next? Robin?
Thank you, Chair. On 7.5, we talk about 200 expressions of interest in the loft and cavity wall insulation energy efficiency schemes, with only 28 eligible applications. Do we understand where that disconnect happened?
I think I'll probably need to come back to give you a definitive answer on that. There were particular eligibility criteria in terms of the measures that could be installed and the financial criteria, and I think it's something around that, but I'd rather give you a full answer if I can. Come back.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the other element of it was when potential applicants fully understood how the process worked and some of the implications of having those works carried out to their property. I think that also caused a bit of fallout of people. You know, people were signing up, seeing an opportunity, but then the full extent and the full impact of works being carried out to their homes sort of took fruition, really. So we've seen some fallout from that as well. But yeah, but I'm sure we can provide a fuller answer indeed.
Okay. Thank you. Andy Roberts, do you want to?
Thanks. The first is I'll accept entirely if somebody at some stage in the future tells me I'm completely wrong on this. But I get the idea of cutting carbon in the city centre in particular by having electric vehicles. But if anything you read on Mr. Google, I know that's not the best source of information, 50% of particulates come from tyres, and the effect is 1,000 times worse than, according to Mr. Google, than it is on exhaust emissions. And that it has an effect on aquatic life when it drains off. It also has an effect on human life, but apparently affecting DNA, etc., etc. So the inference of that would be that changing the motive power of a car is much less important than reducing miles and sharing vehicles. We've talked about car shares, we've talked about public transport and all these sort of things. Now, I'm not going to say all this is true. I expect you to look at it, but my concern is the report doesn't refer to particulates. And whatever else is true, particulates are not nice things to have. And in a city centre, it's probably likely that we know what the air quality is, but I don't know whether that refers to particulates. It talks about NOx, but not about particulates. So not for now, but for the future, could the great brains of the City Council think about that? Now or later? No, I'm willing to carry on. The other is there's mention in paragraph 13 of Akenbury Orchard. And I'd just like to say that I walked across there yesterday. I don't believe there were 1,500 saplings, by the way. I think there's a mistake there somewhere, but okay. But be that as it may, it's a fantastic site. I can't say it's like the Austrian Tyrol or anything like that, but it is absolutely beautiful, laden with flowers of all sorts of species. I don't know what they are, but there's lots of them. And there's also lots of people walking through looking at those flowers. And that's a combination of work from Wedge, Nummery Wood High School Social Club did some of that, and big tick to Worcester City Council and its team as well for what they've done there. Fantastic job. I mean, you go on. I mean, if Paul was here, he'd tell you about the edible hedge that's been built and all that created and all these sort of things. Absolutely wonderful job. Just shows what you can do if the community and the City Council are one mind.
Okay. Thank you, Andy. Lloyd, did you want to say anything? No? Okay. On the points that Andy's raised, yeah?
Yeah, yes, Andy, the particular matter. Yeah, it says the particular matter, the problem is that our monitors at the moment do not measure it. So without measuring it, we don't actually know how bad it is. So I wonder whether that's something we could actually bring to committee and ask licensing to take it up. Okay, excellent. Well, can we show our support as a committee in that case?
Yeah, Chair, I was going to say we've got Licensing and Environmental Health Committee next week or the week after, where we have the annual air quality update report. And in that, it starts to talk in more detail about how we intend to monitor a variety of pollutants moving forward, which may include particulates, with a view to working up some more detailed costed proposals for September committee. And Councillor Roberts is absolutely correct. The pollutant of concern in Worcester is NOx, is NO2. Which is derived from traffic emissions, and it would be wrong to say there is no particulate matter because there will be, but obviously not as much as some areas that have heavy industry and other types of pollutants that are primarily associated with particulate matter. But in terms of monitoring equipment, that is on the agenda for future committee meetings.
Okay. Yeah, given that this strategy cuts across the full council and has fingers in many pies, many of which aren't directly under the control of this committee. Maybe perhaps it's just there's an element in future reports that just links into what's going on in environmental health and just brings the pertinent facts across. So we've got it all under one report, so people don't think there's an omission because it is being dealt with in a separate committee. Okay. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of questions. The first one, again, is on EV charge points and item 3.2. Straightforward question. Plans to invest a further 200,000 in charging points. Can you tell me how many charging points that represents? Because I can't see that figure in the report. I know we've got, we're talking about 9 new charge points and an extra 200,000 that's being invested. What impact does that make on the total number? The other question is paragraph 16.6, which is about plastic-free businesses. The report tells us that there are 39 businesses in Worcester that have signed up to be plastic-free champions. It would be really helpful if the report identified those businesses if not by name, although by name better still, but by what sort of business they are, because, you know, if it's an IT business, then we're not expecting them to use much plastic in any case. Other businesses will, it will make a much more impact. Bearing in mind that I don't know how many businesses we've got in the city, probably several hundred, if not thousands. If we start to work through these businesses, you can be fairly sure that the last on the list to actually achieve any significant progress will be the supermarkets, which practically everybody in the city uses to buy our product. I'm not saying that it's very likely we're going to get to plastic-free supermarkets, but there could be some steps taken. For instance, encouraging supermarkets to have plastic-free aisles. Some of them do have organic areas. The same argument would support identifiably plastic-free zones so that they can see the commercial impact on their business, which may encourage them to take further steps. So I just wonder if, first of all, if there can be more done to identify 39 businesses, which isn't really very much, and if it could actually represent almost negligible impact, or it might be significant depending on who they are. And how we encourage the real big problem areas to take steps.
Okay, so thank you. So if I take your second question around plastic-free businesses, I think, and I'll look to Claire to nod if I'm correct, I think we targeted that at takeaways and hospitality businesses and food businesses primarily, and that was...
Yes, so sorry, we should be more specific in the report. Those 39 businesses are all local food businesses, so they're cafes, takeaways and bars. And I do have a list from Plastic Free Worcester of those 39 businesses.
So we can share that with members. Clearly, we can share that with members, and I think that campaign was about creating publicity and support for this as a concept. Your point's very well made about the national, multinational businesses. I think more of a challenge for the council to influence those large businesses, and that's more of a national policy point. But certainly something that we would look to promote what we're doing around plastic free, and I think it's very commendable that we've got those businesses on board. We've got an organisation called Plastic Free Worcester in our city, which can only be good for the city and the profile of that. And then your question was, I think, was how many charge points do you get for £200,000? My answer, I'm afraid, is it depends. This is an area where the technology is changing quite fast. I think we've gone from fast chargers, super fast chargers, ultra fast chargers. I'm not sure what the next one will be that sits on top of that. And I think if you go to motorway service station, you'll find that they're all different chargers. They all charge different amounts and how long it takes you to fill up your battery. As a order of magnitude, I think we were at something like £5,000 to £7,000 for a basic slow charger, from what I recall. I think you could be at £30,000 for one of the new ones. So part of our paper that we'll need to bring to members will be some analysis of what the demand is and what's the best way to invest our money. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. And Marjorie?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to make a similar point about zero-emission vehicle charging. I have an EV myself, and it's an older model, and quite often I found that some motorway service stations do not provide the kind of connector I need, and we mustn't forget the people who can't afford to buy a new car and are going to be driving an older EV for some time. So I just put in a plea for those people, of whom I am one, of course, although I can charge at home. I've got a couple of other point as well. Going back to the home insulation project, I'd like to know whether it's actually the renters of those social housing properties that are going to benefit from the solar panels. I've had conversations with residents where they've said, oh, yeah, I've said, oh, you've got solar panels on your roof, that's great. And they said, oh, but it doesn't benefit us, it just goes straight to our landlord. So I think that might possibly be a problem that needs investigating, because there's two reasons for doing this, of course. One is to reduce emissions, and the other one is to make those homes less expensive to heat, and thereby benefiting, you know, people who on low incomes. I'm very interested to hear about what you can tell us about the people who didn't take up the offer of the improvements, as mentioned earlier on by Robin. So will you be sending that information to everybody? Okay. I'm absolutely delighted to see that you're going to put in the questions, the two new considerations that go into council reports. And in fact, in general, I'm very impressed by this report. And I think there was something else. The community environmental projects, in section 11.2, you say the budget has been exhausted. So it's great that we've used that money for that purpose, but it would be great to see also that that we carry on doing this kind of work and that we can find some more money to do some more of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I've just addressed a couple of those points. A point well made about compatibility of charges, and part of our strategy and our considerations will be commuters probably works quite well in St Martin's Gate. Overnight charging for local residents probably works quite well on slower charges there. A motorway service station, there's probably a real demand for as fast a charge as people can get so that they can carry on their journey. So there are different charges for different locations, and we'll certainly look into that. Solar panels should benefit the occupier of the house because it feeds into the electricity. If you've got specific examples or concerns, we can absolutely look into those for you. And we'll circulate, clearly written answers will circulate to all members of the committee. And the community grants, yes, and I think that's something we're planning to bring forward to the next committee, is for members to consider what we may want to do, whether we want to do another phase or another tranche for this year of something that's been so popular.
Okay, Owen?
Yeah, I've got a question for officers about how we can link with and possibly influence planning decisions in the city. And I wonder if there's anything we can do to encourage developers and builders, whether that's new builds or renovations of some of the older buildings in the city, how we can encourage them to install things like bird bricks and bat bricks in appropriate parts of the building, to try and increase the biodiversity and areas for nesting birds and bats.
Thank you. I'm just recalling previous discussions and other members made around the use of planning policy, more around environmental sustainability and insulation. And I recall the regulations, the building regulations and the planning regulations are sort of national regulations, so we can provide information. And I think we've done that through our planning, some of our planning information and guidance we've provided to developers. We certainly have a look at the more biodiverse measures that you've mentioned. Whether we can actually require those measures, I think probably not, but certainly we can provide information and guidance, and hope that some of the developers will take that up.
I'm just thinking of encouragement, just to encourage them to do it rather than anything else.
Richard.
Just one final comment. We've spoken a lot today about carbon emissions and problems of air quality. One of the issues which is regularly concerning me is the issue of water quality in this city, especially in watercourses like Lawn Brook, where there have been significant water pollution incidents, which have damaged the natural environment and the biodiversity of the area. I've raised this many times before. I just wonder whether we have engaged in any water testing equipment or materials which enable us to actually test the quality and safety of the water in some of our watercourses. Clearly the River Severn and Lawn Brook, the River Tame and Duckbrook and others all run through the city, and they are used, and their pollution and their safety and security is a concern.
Yeah, I mean, I could pick it up. The Environment Agency is the lead authority, absolutely, on water quality. And one bit of good news I think we've had over the last few years is the water quality in the Barben Brook and the sighting of an otter actually in Gillivelt Park, and fish, which means that there are fish in the brook there. So, but you know, your point's well made about other watercourses, and it's not something we've looked to invest time and resources in at the moment, bearing in mind that the Environment Agency are the lead on that. But certainly happy to have more discussions with them and as to whether they can deploy their time and resources to do that.
I think there's been, I think from memory, 2,000 water pollution incidents in the last 5 years in Worcestershire alone. So it does show you there is a significant problem in this county and in this city, where we know from the Lawn Brook incident 500 fish died and they still have not been restocked. So there is an issue here which we do need to probably look at.
Yeah. Is there do we have access to data? Because I assume the Environment Agency must collect and provide it, but is that something that could be for watercourses that we're of interest, shared?
We can make some inquiries around what's done regularly. I certainly know that from time to time they will do testing, and Barben Brook was one that was tested, and that was brought to our attention. I mean, as you know, we're a considerable landowner up at Pyrd as well, so we had conversations with the agency about water quality there, and some of the works there have improved that. I don't know what the testing regime is, that's how regular it is and how the information is available. We can certainly make some inquiries.
Any more? No? Well, no, thank you for your questions. Obviously a lot of interest, and thank you for officers for pulling together this report. Has a large number of areas, and thank you for fielding the questions, David. So, on to agenda item 6, which is the do we just need to, sorry, I'll just put it away. Do we all happy to note that report, sorry? Yeah, no, sorry. Go ahead, Marcel. Agenda item 6 is the Public Bin Investment Programme Update Report. Tim, are you taking the lead on this one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This report is to update the committee on the progress to install new public bins across Worcester. Following the report presented to committee in January 2021, it was resolved that officers would work with members to produce action plans for each ward. The Policy and Resources Committee in June 2021 approved an allocation of £75,000 from the 2021 surplus for enhanced public waste collection services, which included £48,000 for bins. However, following our initial analysis of bin provision to sort out immediate problems and consolidate multiple bins at the same location, it was determined that we would need up to £80,000. So it was agreed to fund the further £32,000 reallocated from other environmental operations elements. So phase 1 of the scheme looked at consolidating the multiple small bins in the same location by replacing them with one larger cabinet with an internal wheelie bin. This increases the capacity at those locations and adding bin provision where identified to resolve more immediate problems. To evaluate the bin provision, we consulted ward members from August last year, which led to the ward action plans for phase 1 and also phase 2, which applied from April this year. In November last year, this committee recommended to Council the amount of £80,000 for Phase 1 to be taken from the capital programme last year, 21-22. This phase 1, was completed in March this year, and we did 78 new concrete foundations and 126 new bin cabinets. This was carried out for the cost of just under £72,000 against a budget of £80,000. Phase 2 of the scheme improves the provision further by introducing more new bins and capacity across the city, including extension of public recycling to more locations. Also, the bins in Premier Parks will be refurbished. An allocation of £323,000 was added to this year's capital programme to carry out this phase. So phase 2 will include the installation of 136 concrete foundations, 411 black bin cabinets will be provided for general litter, and 104 green bin cabinets for recycling. We'll refurbish 52 bins, and there'll be an extra 19 new bins in parks. All this work will be carried out by the Council's in-house minor works unit. As a result of our experience from phase 1, the specification for the bin has increased slightly to include an improved glue for the graphics, because we've experienced some of the lettering peeling off. Also, we're providing internal deflector plates to ensure that the waste falls into the wheelie bin correctly. Phase 2 bin foundation work started in May, and we are due the first delivery of new bins late in July. And we'll inform members as to when bins will be installed in each ward. We also intend to carry out more communication with residents, schools and other establishments once the installation programme is set. And if I can add a little bit more to this report, for the benefit of new members of this committee, using this new style of bin gives us a significant increase in capacity for public use, which averts the need for multiple bins in one location. There's a reduction in manual handling of sacks by our collection teams because we're now using or converting towards wheelie bins. There's a reduction in usage of single-use plastic sacks. We're expanding public recycling to open spaces and play areas. And overall, it gives a smart, refreshed look to the service. And what we've aimed to do as part of this project is to ensure the bins are in the right location, that we do cover more locations where required. There is better messaging on the bin by stating that it can be used for both litter and dog waste. And of course, we're removing all the old quality stock, such as the open top bins, which have been prone to gull scavenging. And of course, we've had a lot of small capacity bins, which are being removed steadily as well. Thank you, Chair.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tim. Questions? Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if you can give me some idea of the change in total quantity of bins that we're going to be looking at. Obviously, consolidation of multiple bins presumably means taking away half a dozen and putting one or something along those lines, which is mitigated to a degree by introduction of additional ones. The picture I've got in the back of my mind is an elderly lady up in Ronkswood who walks her elderly dog, and they now don't have their dog bin on the route, and so she's got to take quite a detour to get to the nearest dog bin or go back home and put it in her own bin. Obviously, this is typical sort of thing that happen, and none of us can anticipate 100% foolproof that we recognise where the best place is until it's gone, and then residents shout up. How flexible is the process to recognising that bins have been removed from areas and we need to put them back, put something back. I'm conscious that, you know, what we're talking about is a concrete area, so that's a fairly significant investment in the future, as opposed to a post with a bin on it, which obviously is not ideal, but presumably quite a lot more easy to sort of put up fairly quickly and take away.
Okay, thank you. As regards to the change in bin quantity, yes, and it would mainly occurred in phase one, because that was the area we decided to target first. Was a lot of these bins, you probably recognise that we had 2 and 3 bins in the same, sometimes attached to the same post. There was a reduction in that number, compensated by the fact that we were putting these larger bins, and I refer it to really the volume has gone up to compensate for the loss of the little bins, to make the service more resilient, so we're not having incidents of overflowing bins. As regards the number, I don't have that information, but I suspect it was the order of approaching 100 across the whole of the city. But that was mainly in phase one, was to try and get this old stock out of the way. The process is still flexible. Where there is a need that we have gaps in the provision, if you like, then yes, we can look at those gaps. There's a balancing trick really to be had with the bin positioning, because they are a little bit, you know, some of them are larger than the floor mounted bins, and we were trying to get, you know, footfall, you get the position so it best hits the footfall, and working out which way people are walking. You know, we've had examples where we've had to sort of change the position slightly to maximise the bin usage. So, but there is flexibility, and if there are bins that you feel want adding to the scheme, then please say, and we'll accommodate that as best we can. Yeah.
Thank you. Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think this is good. I mean, we need to congratulate our officers for the successful rollout of this scheme. It's been, I think, a tremendous success. But my question, and I apologise for this question in advance, because I think we've been a victim of our own success in a way. We have new, bigger bins, which are able, and we're encouraging people to use for more variety of reasons, including the dog waste bins. And we're actually saying this bin will accept dog waste. That's created a new problem, and it's a problem of odour. And I'm getting, the only complaints I'm getting these days is odour from bins, especially in hot weather when the contents are being cooked. I do wonder if we've got any ability, and I've just been searching on it, and I think a number of councils have started to do this, introduce some form of odour eliminators into the bins where there is a known problem. I'm not sure if that's something which we can consider, because it's clearly causing some significant problems in a few locations.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had many examples yet, but we're not into the height of summer, so I guess we may get some more incidents of this. It's partly around, hopefully, bin cleanliness as well, that we have the ability to take the bin out, the wheelie bin out, and swap it for another one, and then get it washed out. And also due collection times as well, making sure the bin isn't so full that it just overflows as well, you know. So I'd like to think that we can keep the volume of the waste in the bin down by having a resilient collection regime that will help prevent that. Again, bin positioning is part of that answer as well, I think, and if we can keep it away from being too close to people's properties, that would go a long way.
No such thing, as far as you're aware, of odour eliminators which could help. I believe something in Cambridge has been done in the past, but
we'll have a look and we'll come to, we'll research the topic and see what we'll see what experience other councils are getting in this area.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to thank the team for the work. In my ward, I've had really good feedback from residents, and I'm particularly pleased to see that you've noticed about the letters falling off, because that was a bit sad that the letters were peeling off on a lot of the bins. But the problem that we've had in the past few weeks is pretty much all the bins in my area have been graffitied, and I'm wondering whether, when the operatives collect the waste, could they be keeping on top of it, maybe reporting the graffiti so we can get it removed really quickly, rather than residents coming to me and complaining that it's been there for a number of weeks. Thank you.
Yeah, we've also noticed some bins also being graffitied, which is a great shame, you know, being a new asset to the council. Our collectors are encouraged to feedback to the team about this sort of antisocial behaviour. So I'll check with our operations team to make sure we're getting some resilient feedback on that.
Okay, thank you. Andy?
First, Chair, I'd like to say I don't look forward to Richard's version of Ready, Steady, Cook. The little negative things I've had, and there's a reason for saying these negatives, the one was that the plinth was too wide, and that's because in the future that plinth is going to be used for something else. That was it. The one was a smelly bin. I reported that it turned out that because it's in a new location, it had been completely missed, which sounds like a bad thing, but it's great really, because that as soon as Leslie found that out, it's put right, and the complaint disappeared, which is quite reassuring. There was a need for an extra bin because there was a development, and that was put in. And the other one, there was a perfect site for dog walkers and things, but it wasn't accessible for vehicles, and it's just a trade-off, I get that. And so that's it. But remarkably, because you never do get positive comments, I've had positive comments about bins, which is quite extraordinary, really, just the appearance of them and their location. So well done all concerned.
Okay, thank you. Was any response required there? Or I don't.
Yeah, well, thank you for your comments. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone got distracted.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You were just talking about engagement with local members, and I just want to say all the historical things about where they were being located, could you actually circulate that to the half a dozen of us that are new members, not just those on Environment Committee, but other new members, because it is an issue that's always the sort of thing that locals people are going to talk to you about, and it's just nice to make sure that those new members are fully informed.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good point, actually. Yeah, we'll, because of all the ward consultation that took place August, September last year, we'll get that out to all new members. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably worth mentioning that where you have a very large plinth with just one bin, it means there's going to be a recycling bin placed next to it as part of the future phase, and that's normally near parks and play areas, which is great, because a couple of years ago the only place we had recycling was in a couple of parks, and now we've got it in the city centre and in many more places. Okay, so if we've not got any more comments, then is committee happy to note the contents of the report, and in particular the completion of phase 1 and commencement of phase 2? Happy? Brilliant. Copy that. Okay, on to agenda item 7, which is subject is the management and protection of public open space. So over to Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, this is a report that intends to provide members with details of the remedies available to us where public open space has been taken out of use without necessary permission. It was requested by several members, and in consultation with you, Chair, and the previous Vice Chair, it was agreed that they would sit with this committee initially. The report acknowledges that this subject area could probably sit across more than one committee, particularly PED committee, and it may be that, depending on the debate tonight, this committee may want to sort of formally or informally make recommendations to a neighbouring committee, should that be required. Paragraph 3.1 outlines the definition of public open space, Chair, as defined within the Town and Country Planning Act. And many members of the committee will be aware that if we wish to dispose of public open space, there is a process for that that includes advertisement and us needing to take into account any objections or consultation feedback received. And members will also be aware that land can also be protected by legal covenants, protecting it as public open space, and that's very much the case often with planning-led developments. I think one of the most important aspects of this report is the acknowledgement that public open space is critically important to our residents, to the city, and for the role it plays. And that was absolutely the case during COVID and the 4 lockdowns, where we all appreciated the use of outdoor space and spending time outdoors, not just from a health and wellbeing point of view, for exercising or for socialising, but also the importance it plays with regard to environmental sustainability and in particular enhancing biodiversity. So it's critical from an officer point of view, and I'm sure members will share this feeling that any public open space owned by us or destined to come into our ownership via a planning obligation is protected and not taken out of use unless there is a public interest argument to do so. The Council doesn't have a formal policy on the disposal of public open space or land held by us, and neither is it a legal requirement, so we don't have to have one. Some councils do, but in our case, we judge each application on its own merits. And in 3.8 and 3.9, 2 paragraphs there, we've provided 2 examples of where the council has deemed it in the public interest to dispose of public open space. And our constitution enables the Corporate Director of Finance and Resources and the Corporate Director of Planning and Governance to make those decisions, and that will often, probably always, be in consultation with key and relevant members. Paragraph 3.12 then starts to discuss the options to us where land is taken out of use without authorisation. 3.12 talks about land that's in council ownership and is taken out of ownership without consent. And in those instances, that's where the council would look to remedy through unauthorised access, trespass or adverse possession proceedings. Planning legislation would not be appropriate there. It's our own land. Somebody has occupied it or taken it over without our authorisation, so that becomes a civil matter for us to proceed with. And an example of that, but not the only example, is where we have travellers who set up an illegal encampment on our land. The other example, obviously, is where land is not in our ownership, or may be destined to become in our ownership through a planning obligation. And we do have instances where land transfer can take quite a considerable time. Sometimes that is due to complex remaining matters to do with the planning application, but often it can be the fact that transfer matters are stuck with a developer. And we know the size of some developers and the number of sites they are dealing with. It's in these instances where officers feel the perception may be from residents that nobody cares about the land, nothing's happening with the land, and actually there's an opportunity to increase the size of somebody's garden perhaps and take a bit. In those instances where it's not in our ownership, that's where planning enforcement and planning investigations would play their part. And that is simply a matter of the land being used not in accordance with its primary use. There are 4 active planning enforcement cases within the Warden Parish South Ward. We've not gone into any further detail because they are live cases. But Duncan Rudge, our new head of planning, wanted me to assure members, particularly members in that ward, those investigations are live. And as of last week, enforcement was active, either through warning notices or further on from that. So hopefully, Chair, it's a brief report. It outlines the two key options available to us and reassures members that we do have planning powers. We now have 2 planning enforcement officers who work within the council, and we're committed to dealing with cases that are brought to our attention via members. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lloyd. Do we have any questions? Simon?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask about the business of adverse possession, which does rather concern me that this isn't a planning issue, it's a legal issue where I think you've touched on the possibility of people extending the length of their gardens. If that is onto public space like parks or woodlands, as I understand it, if they enclose a piece of land and exclude everybody else from using it, after a period of 10 years, they can claim possession of it legally. It's something we need to be very alert to, because I presume there are little patches around the city where that sort of thing has been going on, and if the owner were to actually apply for legal ownership, that if they've been enclosing it for 10 years or more, that there isn't anything we can do. Do we have any awareness of what parts of the city this may be a risk, and a policy to step on it before people actually find themselves in a position where they can take legal ownership of a piece of land which they've got no business encroaching onto in the first place?
Chair, I'm not aware whether that applies to planning status of land rather than public open space status, but I can clarify that and contact all members just with a brief note on that. Taking your example, Councillor Cronin, I would presume any area or any housing that backs on or fronts on or edges on to parks and woodlands, they would be the areas of most concern. I don't think it requires a policy. If it was brought to officers' attention that public open space had been taken out of use and being used for another purpose, that's where we would get involved, as you say, from a legal and a property point of view. So if that's brought to our attention, we would deal with that as a priority.
Andy?
I very much welcome this. It brings clarity, but I also accept that it's not there yet. It's thinking complicated. I mean, Lloyd just referred to enforcement. I don't think the questionnaire that's gone out is enforcement. The advice I got from our legal people is not enforcement. It's not quite there. So that's how complicated it is. But this is so much better than where we were, because there was no a policy as such as we went into COVID and the lockdown, and people started to, they're bored for heaven's sake, weren't they? Started to stretch out and do things they might not normally have done. And in that sort of vacuum of policy, you had in our area, we had neighbours complaining about neighbours, and the parish council concerned about this, that and the other, and it caused a great deal of disquiet that didn't need to be done. And at that time, and I advised people, because I took advice from the city council, at that time I was told that this was a civil matter. Well, it clearly wasn't a civil matter. We have involvement in it. I'm glad that for our land, Lloyd said it's quite clear now that if somebody encroaches onto city council land, then appropriate action will be taken. That doesn't mean they'll be stopped necessarily, does it? But they'll go through a procedure, and if it's done, it'll be done properly. And I was surprised in the paper that there's the absence of a definition of open green space. I mean, I see in paragraph 3.5 it talks about the importance of green space. So if you look at the definition, it sounds more like a formal park or play area, and not a open amenity where somebody can, run with the dog to the bramble sort of thing, which is very important. And in fact, when I'm saying it's very important, that's just not a throwaway line. When we surveyed the people in Warndon Parish South, protecting green open space amenity came out as number 1 in their priorities. So it's pretty significant. So as I understand it, this doesn't stop the transfer of land, and that would be perfectly proper, providing there's a procedure is gone through. If it's an open space and it provides biodiversity, one of the conditions would be, I guess, that it would have to, that biodiversity must be maintained. And if it were to be transferred to a garden or something, then that would mean a planning application would have to go for a change of use. That sounds to me like a proper, orderly procedure, rather than the fingers crossed and hope it's okay. And the point about that is, I think, if anybody's going to fall out with anyone, it will be with the city council, and we have to, that's what we're here for in a way. And what it won't do is be neighbour on neighbour, which has been pretty unpleasant, to be frank. I'm just reminded, by the way, that when Mike Price wrote a piece recently, when the people of Worcester had part of Pitchcroft taken away from them in the 1880s, they rioted and towed away the local judge. So get it right, or we're all in trouble.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Owen?
Yeah, just a quick question for Lloyd. You say about referring these things on to you. How do we physically do that? I mean, obviously, I can tell you, but is there a formal route to do it for residents around the city?
If residents would send you, I think you might London way.
All right.
We've got the website, where can we report in there, if members again.
Any more questions or comments? So, so at the moment we just got a recommendation that we note the contents of the report, but you also mentioned that we might want to refer to PED. Is that just so you could expand on what the benefits of that would be, and whether we should go down that route or just note it tonight?
I think what I referred to in the report, Chair, is that if this committee felt there was a need for a neighbouring committee to look at something in particular to do with this subject area, then you've got the ability to make a recommendation. From the debate that I've heard, Chair, I think officers, members seem content with the report, content with the approach, so I'm not sensing any need for a recommendation.
Thanks for that clarification. So, on that basis, are committee happy to note the contents of the report? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, on to agenda item 8, which is the annual and quarter 4 performance report for 2021-2022. Are you leading on this one?
Thank you, Chair. I shall keep this very brief, Chair. This is the quarter 4 and the annual committee performance scorecard for 21-22. The last time this report for the previous year report to this committee's attention. It's the usual style of report, Chair, light covering report with further information on each of the key projects and each of the key PIs. Pleased to say, Chair, lots of green in the report, and David Sutton will explain this far better than me. The reds within the projects and actions, just to reassure members, there is progress, work is ongoing. It's just that we've not dealt with the performance management system particularly well. We've not changed milestone dates, and that means things are showing red. David will put that in far simpler terms than I will. But generally, Chair, things are going really well. we're on target with lots of KPIs and on target with lots of projects, albeit some of the timescales have been slightly pushed back. So I don't know whether David wants to pick up on the performance management piece, and then happy to take any questions.
Yeah, perhaps if I can just pick up on that. As this is the end of year report, many of these projects have got a due date of the 31st of March. And if that due date has passed and the project hasn't been completed, it will automatically appear as red, even though there may be a considerable amount of progress made and the project may be nearing completion. Rather than officers changing the due date and bringing it to your report that shows that everything's green, there will be a note there suggesting that the due date for the project is amended. So, provided members are happy to note this report with those comments in, officers will take that away and amend the due dates, and the projects will continue. So that's why there's a number there showing as red, because we've gone past the end of March. I hope that's clear.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on this report? No? Okay. Okay then, so if there's no questions, are we happy to note the recommendation? Yep, noted. Brilliant. Thank you. Agenda item 9 is any other business. We've got one item of business which Robin wants to bring forward.
Thank you, Chair. Back in January 2020, the Environment Committee committed to visiting Lornbrook Nature Reserve following a presentation from a member of the public. So I'd like to propose that in order for there to be a closer relationship and understanding between the neighbourhood street scene teams and their respective ward councillors, officers are requested to arrange a series of on-location meet the team, meet the councillor get-togethers with each of the neighbourhood teams at pertinent locations recommended by committee members in liaison with their respective political groups. Invites to be extended to all Environment Committee members to enable a broader understanding of activities across the city. I almost said it word perfect, Andy.
That sounds like an excellent idea. Just to give a bit of background, especially for newer members, we've just before COVID, the council rearranged how we deal with the neighbourhood cleaning. So the teams that keep the hedgerows clear, pick up litter, cut the grass. And rather than one team sweeping across the whole city, we've now got localised teams that are dedicated to approximately sort of 3 wards. And the intent was always that there'd be an opportunity to build a greater relationship between the sort of dedicated environmental ops team and their ward councillors, so that they can better fine-tune and work together, bring in, coordinate with local volunteers and friends of groups for parks. So if committee's happy, what we do is ask, take an action between chair and vice chair and officers just to organise a series of opportunities for the local councillors to meet their team and sort of discuss local issues and sort of see how the teams work. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree. I think that would be something that we could definitely take forward and fully support that. So we'll arrange that with our place-based teams and we'll look at that area first for you, okay?
I'm getting to sound like a stuck record already. Great that you've got neighbourhood teams. It would be really nice if you could inform the new councillors who they are and how they contact them.
All councillors.
Well, all councillors, but I'm assuming you already know. But certainly for the new councillors, it would be useful to know who we contact again. Litter is something that's come up a lot with residents.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what it's like when you're a new councillor. You've got no contacts, have you? So I think that would be very useful. Okay, so if we take that away as an action, and that means we've come to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.